Won't someone think of the boobs?
Hello, fellow netizens, and welcome to Scandalous Games, the show where we take a closer look at video game-related controversies. I'm Kevin Impellizzeri, and I do the research, and I share a story of a video game-related controversy to my friends.
I'm Andy Hunter, a longtime fan of all things Nintendo, and first-time visitor to the home recording studio of Kevin and Kate.
And I'm Kate, comfortably seated next to our loving dog, and made software for over 10 years, but not the fun kind.
Yeah, this is Scandalous Games first. We are doing our first fully in-person recording. Andy was back in the States and was gracious enough to come to our house, which we're sitting with our dog Georgie, who is currently licking my arm. But thank you, Andy. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This is awesome.
So, special recording on that front, but it's also our first recording of 2026 officially. And we are going back to the Real Game Awards. For those who don't remember, the Real Game Awards was an award show / business venture founded by Craig Skistimas, who was one of the founders of Screw Attack, who in recent years has set himself up as basically a cultural commentator, if I'm being extremely generous. If I'm being ungenerous, an anti-woke grifter, who set up this award show as being allegedly by gamers for gamers, but probably more accurately is by Craig for people who will give Craig money. Because again, if we recall, every aspect of this award show, from setting up categories, to nominating games, to voting for games, and in some cases even presenting at the award show, were all some level of financial transaction. And we use this to talk about a couple of notable controversies in the anti-woke circles, the things that they're really upset about. For example, last time we talked about Sweet Baby Inc., which is the small script consulting firm based out of Montreal, that for some reason a bunch of the people in Craig's circle, this sort of anti-woke circle, saw as some sort of like evil, shadowy cabal that was the reason why, gay and brown people were in games now and ruining them somehow.
Yeah, and I assume they invented trans people.
Yeah, and the pronouns. Don't forget the pronouns.
My God, the pronouns. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pick up another one of these threads. The way I look at this award show, the messages that they sent with it, the people who were associated with it, is that, so, all sorts of groups and subcultures have like kind of their own means of communication among their members. And people in those in-groups learn to, present signals or signs to other members to identify that will have no clear meaning to outsiders. And these can be for benign reasons, like you're making, a reference to a video game or a movie or TV show you like. Or they can be for more sinister purposes, like showing you endorse or encourage, violence or oppression. But these can be important, for example, marginalized groups. If you don't feel safe in larger communities, but you want to have some level of connectivity with other people, that you can make some kind of reference or something that shows, and people could, if they know that, they can then, respond back to it. But they can also, on the flip side of that, be a smokescreen for more nefarious things. So here's a benign example. Imagine I go up to you guys, go, Leroy Jenkins.
I understand the meme. Andy, do you?
Yeah, so that lets us know, those of us who are familiar with that, we're like, you are a fellow
millennial.
Enjoyer of video game related memes.
Yeah, and maybe you enjoy Warcraft.
Yeah.
It was Warcraft, right?
Yeah, it's World of Warcraft. And you have to be a gamer of a certain age to get that. Like, the youngins are not going to know what we're talking about.
Well, actually, okay, and we're getting in the weeds a little here, but I think Warcraft is still kind of like that, where it's like you have to engineer the attack carefully in order to do well. And the whole thing with Leroy Jenkins was he just screamed and ran in and ruined everything.
Yes.
Right, but I feel like that's universal. Whereas, as you say, being a gamer of a certain age, like this came out. Was this on Something Awful? Is that where that debuted?
I don't remember. I'd have to look into the history of that. I
think it was pre-YouTube, honestly.
It was definitely pre-YouTube, but it was also like I haven't done a lot of research into Leroy Jenkins, but I know there's... I've heard...
Next episode about Leroy Jenkins.
Maybe we might do Leroy, depending on that. Because the thing I found really interesting about that is I've heard people say, like, on one hand, some people see it as like an earnest... These guys planning this very elaborate raid, and this guy rushes in. I've also heard it described as performance, that it was staged, that it was a performance piece for the whole time. And I don't know. That I don't know. People know scandalsgamespodcast@gmail.com.
Leroy Jenkins, contact the podcast.
Leroy Jenkins. Scandals Games interview with Leroy Jenkins. Hey there, fellow netizens. This is Kevin in the editor's chair with a little bit of context for Leroy Jenkins. So Leroy Jenkins was a character in World of Warcraft created by Ben Schultz, who was made famous in a video that was uploaded to the site Warcraft Movies on May the 11th, 2005, that was simply called Leroy, with 2 exclamation points, in which Leroy Jenkins was involved in a planned raid in World of Warcraft for a bunch of other people involved with it are making very carefully well thought out plans, and Leroy instead burst into the raid shouting his own name, and chaos ensues. And it became really an early example of an early viral video and became a meme among gamers of a certain age. So as to whether or not it was authentic, Ben Schultz has done interviews and talked about this, and he's pretty clear that it was satirical. It was making fun of people who played World of Warcraft for the elaborate planning and kind of forget about the actual fun of playing the game. I'll include some information to give you some context in the description, but hope that gives you at least a little bit more of a better picture of this very, very famous early 2000s internet gaming meme. And with that, back to the show. So that's an example of a benign one. I'm going to use a visual in a non-visual media. I'm going to give you a hand signal.
This is in fact the exact one I thought of when you said nefarious one. So Kevin is giving what those of us who, are kind, non-racist people would just think of as like the OK sign, where you're making a ring with your forefinger and thumb and then pointing your other 3 fingers up, which I understand to be some sort of alt-right racist something.
Yeah, this is another one that I don't have. I know kind of anecdotally some of the research on this. My understanding, the way that came up, it was, of course, it started as a schoolyard thing, made you look okay. My understanding about that symbol is a bunch of guys on 4chan, I think it was on the poll 4chan subgroup, that basically said, liberals and leftists are so dumb that if we start doing this, they're going to start thinking it's a racist symbol. And they basically started, let's make it a racist symbol. We'll own the libs this way. And so they started doing those things. Eventually, the point people pointed out this is a racist symbol. And eventually, and this is actually apt for the Real Game Awards, is that memes and references like this and sarcasm, they become so abstracted that it's not clear what things are real and what things aren't, because eventually white supremacists did just start straight up using this as a symbol. Hey there, fellow netizens. This is Kevin in the editor's chair with just a little bit more context regarding the OK symbol. And this comes directly from an article on it from the Anti-Defamation League, which I'll include in the notes, which says, quote, "Use of the OK symbol in most contexts is entirely innocuous and harmless. In 2017, the OK hand gesture acquired a new and different significance thanks to a hoax by members of the website 4chan to falsely promote the gesture as a hate symbol, claiming the gesture represented the letters WP for white power. The OK gesture hoax was merely the latest in a series of similar 4chan hoaxes using various innocuous symbols. In each case, the hoaxers hoped that the media and liberals would overreact by condemning a common image as white supremacist. In the case of the OK gesture, the hoax was so successful, the symbol became a popular trolling tactic on the part of right-leaning individuals who would often post photos to social media of themselves posing while making the OK gesture. Ironically, some white supremacists themselves soon also participated in such trolling tactics, lending an actual credence to those who labeled the trolling gesture as racist in nature. By 2019, at least some white supremacists seem to have abandoned the ironic or satiric intent behind the original trolling campaign and used the symbol as a sincere expression of white supremacy, such as when Australian white supremacist Brenton Tarrant flashed the symbol during a March 2019 courtroom appearance soon after his arrest for allegedly murdering 50 people in a shooting spree at mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. The overwhelming usage of the OK hand gesture today is still its traditional purpose as a gesture signifying assent or approval. As a result, someone who uses the symbol cannot be assumed to be using the symbol in either a trolling or especially white supremacist context unless other contextual evidence exists to support the contention. And so just adding a little bit more context there, and this idea about using seemingly innocuous signs or symbols that may not mean or may have benign things that can mean different things to different groups. So just a little bit more information. Like I said, I will include a link to the ADL article on this in the notes, and back to the show.
It's interesting because I have many colleagues at work who are absolutely not racist, absolutely, absolute allies. And one in particular who I consider a safe person, we use Slack all the time and you can like do emoji reacts, and this person used to always do that A-OK hand symbol as a way to signal like, I got it, okay.
Like the way that many of us will use a thumbs up.
Exactly. And they stopped using it about 5 years ago, and I'm assuming it's probably because somebody pulled them and was like, I know what you mean, but doesn't mean that anymore, unfortunately. Yeah.
That bums me out, see, because when I usually think of that, aside from that reference, I think of if you ever played Earthbound. There's a whole thing in Earthbound, which I thought was very charming when I first played it, where every new town you visit, the game will pause for a second, and a photographer will literally parachute in from the sky, and he'll have you pose for a picture. And every time, Ness will make the OK symbol.
The A-OK sign.
That's the happier way I like to think of associating that. And of course, Nazis ruin everything. Mm-hmm. But so back to these kinds of subtle signs that allow people to communicate in a kind of larger normie world that they are part of this in-group. And by perusing the nominees of the Real Game Awards, you can see a bunch of that kind of signaling at play. So I'm going to run down for today's episode, we're going to run down one example of that. I'm going to run down a game that attracted prominent attention from these people at the Real Game Awards, and showing how the inclusion of this game at the Real Game Awards sends some not-so-subtle signals that the Real Game Awards was less by gamers for gamers, and more by chuds for chuds who were willing to pay Stuttering Craig money.
By spelled B-U-Y, right?
Listen, the money is the most important part of video game fandom, and I say this in a room full of toys that we're doing this, is consumerism, is buying things, is giving people money.
Well, we could do a whole
podcast.
yeah, just about how, it is so interesting, this, and whatever you're a fan of, not whatever you're a fan of, because you could be a fan of just meeting up in a coffee shop and just doing poetry that you're all agreeing you'll never sell. But if you're into anything mainstream, whether it's movies or video games or even book publishing and stuff, it's that there's that tension between the art and the commerce, and corporations are never your friends, even those who tend to engage in less disagreeable practices. And, as they say, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but also we have limited time on this earth. If having a toy or playing a video game brings you joy, you do deserve that. But that said, if making other people feel bad brings you joy, you don't deserve that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the official stance of Scandalous Games, but it is the official stance of the lawyer for Scandalous Games.
Andy, you're the lawyer, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Famously.
All right, so, like I said, these kind of subtle signs about where they are in various, again, controversies in these circles. A great example of that is the one we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover a game called Stellar Blade. Has either of you heard of Stellar Blade?
Yes. Is that the one just from 2 or 3 years ago, where it's basically like a character action game, but the main character is just very just has over the top jiggle physics or some there's some sort of objectification of the main character, but also there are people who legitimately are really into the gameplay. I think I've heard that tension between there are people man, I love this gameplay, but I feel so awkward admitting that because there are people who love this game only because of the depiction of the main character.
Do you know anything about this game?
Nothing at all. No.
So yeah, that you've hit it at some of the stuff we're going to talk about with Stellar Blade. So Stellar Blade is it was developed by a Korean company called Shift Up and published by Sony initially as a PS5 exclusive on April the 26th, 2024. It's now on the PC too. Stellar Blade is a third-person actions, I would say probably a third-person action Souls-like is a good way of describing it, where players assume the role of Eve, an android charged with liberating a post-apocalyptic Earth from a robotic race called the Natibas. I haven't played it, but I've seen a lot of conversations about it. It's very, if you've ever played Nier Automata, it's very...
I can't get past the opening section of Nier Automata, and...
I'm just the tutorial.
No, seriously, and then you have to redo the entire thing because they don't give you a save point until after that. And so
that's infuriating.
So I was like, all right, maybe you're trying to make a statement, but after the fourth time... couldn't do it.
That's like in Demon Souls, where you can't level up until you beat the first boss. Or like in Bloodborne. Bloodborne's another good example. You can't level up until you gain this thing called Insight, which you can only gain either you get these items called Madman's Knowledge, or you find a boss. So theoretically, you could not level up until you found a boss. I learned that the hard way. That was funny. But anyway, yeah, so it's very fast-paced action. It's a lot of, like, read and react, a lot of movement, very flashy. I've heard it compared to Nier Automata. I've heard it compared to Bayonetta in a very similar vein. So it's like a blending of a lot of different types of games. And it is pretty well received overall. It's attracted critical praise and a positive reception among fans. As of this recording, it is an 81 out of 100 critical and a 9.2 out of 10 audience score on Metacritic. So people generally think it's pretty good. And it was also quite popular at the Real Game Awards. It won Best Action Game, it won Best PlayStation IP, and came up a close second in the running for Game of the Year behind Black Myth Wukong. Its developer, Shift Up, was also nominated for Best Company, losing to FromSoft. And its protagonist, Eve, who I'm going to show a picture of you in a second, Eve cleaned up at the show, winning Waifu of the Year and the coveted award for Best Jiggle Physics.
Oh, man.
Oh, man, I really wanted that one, too.
I'm going to earn the jiggy.
I was a fucking shoo-in. Come on now.
And we have, like, I guess, like, Bayonetta just there, like, tearing up her playbill. Storms out.
It would be really hilarious if, at some point in the future, you know, whenever Pokemon finally decides to catch up to the rest of the industry, yeah, if, like, you know, everybody expects, you know, a future iteration of Lara Croft to do that, but actually Snorlax wins for
Well, honestly, yes.
So I'm going to pass this around, because this is what Eve
right.
looks like.
Alright. Jiggle Physics you said she won for?
Yes. And Best Waifu of the Year.
I mean, waifu, my immediate instinct is, that looks like some pretty serious armor that would, if anything, prevent the Jiggle Physics from happening.
Now, hold on to that. I'll talk about that in a second, but...
Alright, is this also a game where you can get different outfits to put her in? Okay.
Yes.
Ah!
So, I show that image because, you know, for those who aren't familiar, Eve looks very conventionally attractive, like stereotypical anime waifu. Very slight, dark hair.
A youthful-looking face.
Yes, young-looking face. And as you pointed out, Andy, one of the features in Stellar Blade is that you can unlock outfits and put her in different types of outfits. So the one I showed is a little less revealing than some of the other ones.
Why are you holding out on us, Kevin? What's
Yeah, come on.
So keep that in mind when we talk about this. So yeah, it gets very popular at this award show. Waifu of the Year, Best Jiggle Physics. They love this game there. And so as I mentioned before, like this is one of those examples of a game that sends not so subtle signals to the Real Game Awards audience. As Eve and Stellar Blade's popularity in the anti-woke gaming crowd is a window into a popular talking point among outraged merchants in the right-wing gaming scene. This game has been a rallying point for guys like Stuttering Craig. There's a reason why it got so much attention. Because remember, people nominate these things, they vote for these categories. There's a reason why this game resonated with a lot of them.
And so, I guess they are considering the game to be anti-woke simply because it has a female character that it objectifies, that it is... Because I feel like there are still... You know, I haven't done a full analysis or anything, but as a straight cis male, I feel like there are still so many games that cater to my gaze and my tastes and stuff in terms of like maybe they're not as overt as you can dress up a character and has generous jiggle physics, but to me it's still so weird, and I think I said this in the last episode. To me, it's so weird to think about like, oh, they've taken out attractive women from video games, and it's now this grand statement that I must support. But yeah, so to me, it's weird that this group of people would feel like they must rally behind Stellar Blade. Because I feel like it's still... this thing that they're saying has been taken away from them, I don't feel like has been
Won't
taken
someone
away from
think
them.
of the boobs?
I appreciate where your headspace... Yeah, it's starting out pretty sad. And I'll tell you what, it's only going to get sadder.
Because the next year they changed the name from Jiggle Physics to the Crunchy Sock Award.
All right, so here's some context for this. So
Throw that sock away. Mom won't watch it anymore.
Oh, shudder. So here's some context for this. So there's a segment of the terminally online gamer community that has a real big problem with AAA game companies right now. And it's not because of rising gamer system prices. It's not for predatory monetization strategies or kind of like all the impact of capitalism has on games. No, they've identified that the real problem in video games today is the woke mob is keeping game devs from making hot female characters anymore. Arguing that quote-unquote Western game developers, which is kind of a dog whistle in this community. If you're Western developers, that's usually a sign that's one of these people. Again, one of those subtle little signals to their audiences.
Is the implication that Eastern, as in, like, Asian developers will just kowtow more?
That Asian developers are more willing to cater to these guys, basically. So yeah.
That's what I thought we meant. Okay.
So arguing that Western game developers are giving into woke DEI pressure and getting rid of all those sexy digital ladies. Either giving them, in their eyes, ugly or unattractive physical features, often, as an aside, coded frequently as non-white characters they consider ugly.
Isn't there a woman character who's like too muscular? Yeah.
Oh, Abby from The Last of Us 2, probably. Also, even I remember even hearing about the backlash when the second Horizon game came out. The game developers were showing off, like, look how photorealistic Aloy now is, and everybody said was like, oh, they gave her some peach fuzz on her face, like real human skin has. Oh my god, I can never nut to this. You know, like, it really amounted to that kind of...
Which, by the way, that whole thing about, like, men fetishizing utterly hairless women, you're telling on yourself. That's really fucking gross. I'm sorry, So
yeah, there's that part of it. We're concerned about the relative attractiveness of these female characters who are gonna not real, or covering up their various assets in too much clothing. That's the other thing too. Yeah, I remember the whole peach fuzz debate over Aloy, which is, again, it's really dumb. It's all really dumb and sad. And it does, you said, Kate, it really does. You're telling on yourself with a lot of this stuff. So here's one example. One popular subject of digital outrage was Jill Valentine from the 2020 remake of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, simply titled Resident Evil 3, wherein folks complained that the developers replaced Jill's starting outfit from a short skirt in the 1999 original to a pair of long pants in the remake. Some also thought her character model in the PS5 version allegedly made her less attractive than her original appearance from, I want to remind you all, a game that came out during the Clinton administration. So here's a picture of Jill Valentine from Resident Evil 3 remake. So just... You know, I'm just holding in my vomit here. Ugh! Disgusting.
Oh, wow. Disgusting.
You know what I hate to see? A woman wearing clothes.
Yeah, yeah, the tank top ruins it. I agree.
And the other thing they complain about is that in the remake, she wears long pants as opposed to her really short skirt, which she has in Resident Evil 3.
Which is just more practical for the gameplay. I mean, okay, we don't have a lot of time, but like that pisses me off in older things, movies, games, whatever, where a person is like, that's entirely impractical, right? Like, we all gave, what's her name in Jurassic Park grief for running in high heels, which, fair, as a person who's worn high heels, yeah, I couldn't run in those, but, you know, then you put somebody in, I'm seeing what you're saying, realistic clothing, and everyone's gonna piss their pants over it.
So I'm passing around an image of what her character model looks like in Resident Evil 3, the original one, with the short skirt.
Also, I see that she's wearing a tube top.
A tube top. Yeah. Let me tell you again, as a person who's also wearing a tube top, those boobs are coming out real fast if she's running away from zombies.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing: I'm happy to see characters dressed practically. I'm also happy to see characters dressed impractically. You know, like, so much of, like, suits of armor depicted aren't actually necessarily practical, or like anything like that is, to me, it's fine either way. I think the three of us in this room would probably agree. I want to see characters looking cool.
Right, looking cool is the best. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what ticks me off about outfits like that are impractical. It's not so much like, well, you couldn't run in high heels, or you couldn't run wearing a tube top. It's more just like, it's clearly just there to titillate people. And like the outfit that she's got in the other thing, likewise, if she was wearing something else that was similarly impractical, it would be kind of ridiculous. But it's like, it's cool looking. And then for me, just because I tend to gravitate toward more realism especially in horror movies and games and such, it's like, it makes, like, why would you do this? I'm one of those people, right? Like, why wouldn't you just do this or that or whatever? But like, it's more fun for me if it looks cool, and extra points if it's functional. I agree.
Yeah, and so what I showed you, those images, people got really upset about that, or at least they presented themselves as being very upset about Jill from the remake of Resident Evil 3.
I am too, no.
So, for example, I came across an April 3rd, 2020 thread from the Resident Evil 3 Steam discussion boards that opened, quote, "Why is Jill downgraded and made to look like an ugly man?" End quote.
Wow.
The thread ended up attracting 160 replies, roughly evenly divided between folks who agreed with the initial poster's sentiment and lamenting the state of woke game companies ruining the medium, and other people asking the original poster to get their eyes checked.
Well, yeah, I'd have to say, I mean, if that picture you showed us was of a man, I would say it was a very pretty man. Also, it's interesting that because Capcom is not a Western company, like it's a Japanese company, so even with like their dog whistle, are they really just saying basically like Korean and Chinese companies will cater to these needs, or are there some Japanese companies that they'll also still say are doing things to their tastes?
The thing I find funny as like a meta picture of these communities, of these outrage communities, is they will complain about pandering. They'll complain that, diverse characters, if a gay character or a trans character, they're pandering. They're pandering to minorities. They're pandering to queer communities. They don't have an issue with pandering because what they want pandering to them. Well, they only want pandering to them.
I think it's more that they don't see it as pandering because they are incapable of seeing anything other than like catering to the white male audience. Like to them that is the default. And if you make any other choice, you are making an active choice against that. Whereas I am instead very happy to see all creators, what kind of characteristics should we give this character? And like, oh, even if their race or their gender is not at a very important story point, it's, to me, perfectly fine for them to be whatever type of character they want to show. But yeah, I think they don't see it as pandering. They just see it as this is the right default state of things. And if you are doing something otherwise, they see it as like, this was mine to have, and you've taken it away.
Yeah, it's the whole, again, going back to the real game awards for real gamers. They see themselves as real gamers, and this is what real gamers like. So, yeah, Jill Valentine has not been the only topic in this particular subgenre of internet outrage, and other notable targets of complaints of the alleged uglifying of video game ladies include a couple we've already mentioned, like Abby from The Last of Us 2. People got so mad about her muscles.
She's got muscles.
They were so mad about her muscles. I mean, we could also talk about the fact the way people, is it Ellie from Last of Us? I can't remember the main character's name.
Yeah,
they get really mad about the actor in the TV show for some reason.
I believe that actor is non-binary, and that's one of the reasons why they got so ticked off.
Because this child is not as attractive as they want this child to be, which reveals a whole nother thing. But anyway, so Abby from The Last of Us 2 was a big topic. As you pointed out, Andy, Aloy from the Horizon series, and Maria and Angela from the 2024 Silent Hill 2 remake are also popular topics for them too. And some have gone so far as to remedy these issues through mods, either creating skimpier outfits for these digital ladies, or just making them completely nude, as they long for the halcyon days of Lara Croft and her pointy PS1 Era Boobs.
Pointy PS1 Era Boobs. Great name for a band, by the way. What's up, Philadelphia? We are Pointy PS1 Era Boobs! And we're gonna play Why is Abby from Last of Us 2 so muscular?
Well, you'll be happy to know, all was not lost for the aficionados of the ideal virtual female form, for in 2024, there emerged a bright, shining, busty beacon of hope for dudes concerned about this veritable deluge of unfuckable digital ladies. Enter Eve from Stellar Blade. In interviews leading up to the game's release, representatives at Shift Up explained their motivation for Eve's design was that they reasoned if you're going to look at a character from behind for about 22 to 40 hours of gameplay, they might as well have a hot ass. For the anti-woke crowd, Eve quickly became the symbol of everything they professed that they were fighting for, and a definitive counterattack to the DEI onslaught. And a bevy of content creators asserted that buying and supporting Shift Up's new game was somehow owning the SJWs, and a repudiation of those Western game developers and their ugly chicks. All of that raises an important question. Why? Why did they pick this game? Of all the gaming heroines, of all the games in all the world, why did it have to be Eve? This is where things get real dumb, I'm gonna say.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, also, like, we haven't even addressed yet that porn games exist. Like, there are games that I'm sure have, like, far more exaggerated jiggle physics and actually, like, fully nude female characters. Like, games that are specifically catering to this. I guess I have to assume it's partly just that they want... It's more the fact that they want it mainstream and yet also still catering.
I'm reminded of, I think it's a joke by the comedian Bill Hicks, where he talked about how, like, you can go to a strip club and see, like, 37 boobs all night. You see the women up there with their boobs and they're out and they're, but, you ask for another beer and the waitress comes over and leans over to give you your beer and you look down her shirt and accidentally see her boob. That's the best boob you saw all night because you're not supposed to see that one. Yeah, I think that maybe, I don't know. I feel like that might be what's going on here. Kevin, tell us.
And you can even say things like, fan art exists. Fan art exists.
Yeah.
So they gravitate towards Eve. And so why do they do this? And so this is where things get real weird. I've come across early posts before the game came out asserting that Eve's design was somehow triggering Western game developers and the anti-woke SJW snowflakes who hate video games because they're mean, as far back as about February 2024. A couple of notable creators, one of which I'm going to talk about in a second, start signal boosting Eve's design as somehow owning the libs, somehow triggering them. However, what I've noticed from my research is most of their fixation on Eve specifically appears to trace back to an April the 21st, 2024 Twitter post by ShiftUp, the developers, which appeared in the eyes of the people in the specific segment of the internet to offer tacit support for the anti-woke cause, with the company posting, quote, Stellar Blade offers the same uncensored version in all countries, including the Japanese version, end quote. And so, were you to hear that post, were you to read that post, what do you think would be your takeaway? What would you take from something like that?
I guess it just means that that regardless of which country it's being localized for, it's the same version of the game.
Are we expecting there to be more censorship in Japan?
I think you're in the right headspace about this, because so one might interpret the statement as the company saying that there would be no alterations between the Japanese version of the game compared to other regions relative to local classification, ratings, and censorship boards. Different countries have different degrees of content they will allow. So, for example, Australia and Germany, notoriously restrictive of violence in those countries. Germany in particular, for example, if you have images of, for example, Nazis. They're very restrictive about Nazi imagery in games there.
I remember with Australia, with Left 4 Dead 2, there's a level, only one level, where there are some zombified members of police SWAT. And they drop, what do you call them? The rods.
Nightsticks.
Nightsticks, yeah. And so there's an achievement you can get for using all of the melee weapons. One of them is the nightstick. And as a side note, the SWAT team zombies can only be killed from behind because they got all the rally armor on. Anyway, in Australia, my understanding is they're completely removed from the game. And so therefore that particular achievement is not part of the game because you don't get the nightstick and you can't kill everybody. But it's specifically because in Australia it is something about you can't show violence against members of law enforcement. Also, if you've played Left 4 Dead 2, you get blood spray on the screen periodically when you do a lot of killing. That's completely removed from the game. It's so wild to me. Like, Australia has some very conservative video game censorship laws.
I do want to at some point there's a controversial figure in video games in Australia, a guy named Michael Atkinson, who was the head of so different countries have their different review boards. Some of them are through the government, some of them are not. So in the United States, we have the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, which is industry-based. But in Britain and in Australia, they have governmental ones. So Britain has the British Board of Film Classification, which rates games. Hey there, fellow netizens. This is Kevin, once again in the editor's chair with a brief correction here. So the British Board of Film Classification used to be the ratings board for video games in Great Britain. However, that was the case up until 2012 when it was replaced by the PEGI system. I'll include some information about the old BBFC and, of course, PEGI as well. Apologies for the error there, and back to the show. And in Australia, there's a guy named Michael Atkinson who used to run their equivalent there, and he was notoriously very, very restrictive about violence in video games. He was kind of not gonna say kind of like a Jack Thompson type, but people in Australia didn't like him because games were heavily censored when they came through Australia. But yeah, so it seems to me that this is saying that ShiftUp is saying that there won't be significant differences across regions relative to ratings boards, censorship boards. That's not how the anti-woke crowd read this. For major players in the anti-woke crowd, Shift Up's promise of a consistent game across all regions was their proof that the dudes at Shift Up were on their side, rejecting the DEI pressures of outside agitators and embracing the true vision of gaming hotness.
Gaming hotness, another good name for a band, I'm just saying.
Yeah, they opened for Pointy PS1
Era Boobs, yes.
So yeah, they start just mining this for content of like, you know, we're owning the libs, we're owning the DI woke mind virus by making this game with a conventionally attractive digital avatar. That this is our victory. This is the beachhead. This is the beachhead on which we're going. This is our Normandy beach where we are going to destroy the woke.
Actually, Kevin, it would be Norman DDD, I think.
Yeah. And they also see this as like, that this is triggering to the left, to the liberals, to the SJWs. That just the existence of this game is going to just make them so mad. And all those woke mainstream game journalists triggered by being owned by the base sigmas at Shift Up engaged in a concerted plot to tank Stellar Blade by giving it overwhelmingly positive reviews. The general critical consensus I found among mainstream gaming news sites, you know, places like GameStop and IGN and Kotaku and Polygon and all them, is Stellar Blade's pretty good overall. They generally thought it was pretty good, with many favorably comparing it to the likes of Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and Sekiro. Positives included the game's combat system and presentation, while negatives included weak storytelling and lackluster voice acting. Apparently, its story is not very much to write home about. A lot of people talked about, and I won't spoil anything from what I've heard about Stellar Blade compared to Nier, a lot of its story beats are very similar to Nier Automata. And also, people commented that the voice acting is kind of flat, it's kind of dull, but overall, people think it's fun. It's a fun game overall. So, for example, Matt Miller of Game Informer gave the game an 8.75 out of 10, praising its flashy presentation and solid combat, writing of the latter, quote, "It's great fun," end quote. In an 8 out of 10 review for GameSpot, Imran Khan highlighted the gameplay, writing, quote, "Where Stellar Blade does shine is in its moment-to-moment gameplay. The act of doing things, be they running full speed down the slope of a desert dune, or fighting a cockroach monster that leaps out at Eve from behind a box, is genuinely quite fun," end quote. However, he also felt some of the minigames were too much of a departure from the core gameplay, and the game's story was nothing to write home about. So, generally pretty positive. People like this game overall. It's generally considered pretty highly rated across the... So all that sounds pretty cool if you're a Stellar Blade fan, right?
You know, to me it sounds like guys like me are being marginalized somehow.
I'm mad and I don't know why.
Yeah, so... Yeah, if you thought all this is great, you were wrong. You were wrong. Because when folks in the anti-woke crowd booted up Stellar Blade, they quickly discovered, to their horror, that Shift Up had betrayed them. And the so-called uncensored game was in fact rife with censorship. Gasp indeed. And by rife with censorship, I mean a few of Eve's in-game outfits were slightly altered from their pre-release versions, along with some graffiti text changed for the 1.0 version. Just rife with censorship. So the day one patch, which was version 1.0.0.2, added slightly more coverage around Eve's cleavage in several of her suits, including the addition of a lace undergarment to an outfit called the Holiday Rabbit. I'm going to show you a very, very sad side-by-side comparison. So, this is a website which we'll talk about in a second. You'll see these are GIFs of the changes that were made to the outfits between the 1.0 and the later versions.
Question, what's the one that got released?
Try to guess.
I'm guessing the black and white was pre-release and the red and white was post-release on the right side?
So, we have here is a GIF of screenshots of outfits. I believe the ones that are slightly more covered are the pre-release versions.
I can't tell.
That's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that they're suggesting that one is way more covered up than the other. We'll talk about this website in a second. This is a person who was legitimately upset about these alterations to the... And there should be other ones there if you want to scroll further, but...
This isn't pants versus a miniskirt. This is really hard to tell, honestly.
Yeah, I can't... I mean, yeah, this one, like, from behind, I'm not really seeing a difference in... Like, I'm seeing the same amount of butt cheek there. Oh, I see. So this one, for this 1.0, you get to see a little bit of like side boob spilling out, and then they cleaned that out in the 1.003 release. So I think I'm gonna rate this game a 1.003.
So yeah, rife with censorship, these outfits. So yeah, you can see this is an example here. So here's the 1 point. This compares to 2.
Like, yeah, this is...
Spot the difference, seriously. There's a bow in one, there's not a bow in the other.
Her boobs are being held closer
You still
together.
see the same amount of cleavage, I'm just going to say. But yeah, so people got hot and bothered.
Again, I'm sorry.
I think they were cold and bothered.
Yeah.
Like a cold
How can
shower.
I jerk off to this? I was all set!
So yeah, as a result of this, this grave injustice, a narrative quickly took shape in the hours following the release among these people that either Shift Up had violated their alleged promise and had given in to censorship, or publisher Sony had caved to SJW pressure and forced the studio to cover up even services of their DEI overlords. So these are the two narratives that quickly form around this. Now, for what it's worth, on April the 27th, Hyung-tae Kim, who was Stellar Blade's creative lead, made a statement explaining that neither of these were the case, and the alterations were solely Shift Up's decision, and reflected their overall design intentions for the suits in the game, saying, quote, "Understandably, we also recognize this issue. However, the final costume that we wanted to show you is indeed the costume in version 1.0.0.2. I want to clarify that as our final product." End quote. He also addressed some players' complaints in this community with a kind of vague assertion that the company was looking into it, which I can imagine Hyung-tae Kim just, typing out on his invisible typewriter.
That is a problem, and we are looking into it.
We understand that you were all angry and loud. Was that the Simpsons joke where it's a mob comes to Mayor Quimby's offices and is like, are they getting dumber or just louder? So again, the assertion of the company is that this is what they wanted the whole time. This was their design decision. This was their artistic creative direction.
I mean, that actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that actually is more how I would interpret it, is just they changed the costumes a little bit. And I say a little bit because I in terms of revealingness, that's not a word, but I can't tell I genuinely can't tell the difference. I didn't know which one they were supposed to be madder about, and I guess that was your point, and it's a good one because they're basically the same, and this is just people who are looking to stay mad,
Yeah, and so nevertheless, some in the anti-woke crowd would not accept this assertion of the game's artistic intent and sought to make a big deal out of what was, in their eyes, a clear caving to woke DEI pressure. And perhaps the loudest and largest voice raising the alarms in this regard was Mark Kern, who goes by the online handle Grums. Now, are either of you familiar with Mark Kern?
I feel like the name Grums, I would remember. I feel like that would just kind of come to me. No, I'm not. You?
No, but if I had been a video game journalist at this time, I would have loved the opportunity to write a headline like, fans grumsbling online about changes to use outfits.
The headlines write themselves. It's also one of the YouTubers I was talking about. One of their main detractors in their chat is named they go by the screen name Burp Fuck, and it's really hard to have real intelligent discourse. Oh, Burp Fuck really read them their right.
What a great point, Burp Fuck. I appreciate your insights into this matter.
Burp Fuck is your given name.
Burp Fuck was my father's name.
Sorry, go on.
So yeah, Mark Kern. Oh, we'll take a brief departure and add another clown to the perverted circus that is the show. So let's learn about Mark Kern a bit. Oh, Mark. Things I learned about this guy. So Mark Kern. Between 1997 and 2005, Mark Kern was a manager at Blizzard, working on several notable projects including StarCraft and World of Warcraft. In 2005, he left Blizzard to form his own studio called Red 5 Studios, where his small team worked on a sci-fi-themed MMO called Firefall. However, in 2013, Red 5 Studios' board of directors kicked him out amid allegations of gross financial mismanagement, including spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on high-end video production equipment, which is, it's an odd thing to spend money on where you're working at a video game company.
Uh-oh.
As well as we're going to get back to that.
Uh-oh.
Hold on to that. As well as roughly $3 million on a custom-made promotional van for Firefall that failed to clear the lowest possible bar for being a van and that it never ran.
What does that mean?
Like, it doesn't drive. It broke down all the time. It never actually would drive to places. They had to, like, haul it. It was extremely hot inside, and they had all this electronic... The whole idea of the van was that they had a bunch of terminals set up that you could play games like Firefall. It was extremely hot in there. It wasn't well ventilated, so all the equipment kept breaking. Like, this was a debacle. Like a multi-million-dollar debacle. I'll show you a picture of this van.
No,
How hard is it to buy a van? Right?
It was custom made. They had to custom made this van.
Oh, wow.
Look at this thing. $3 million.
If you gave me no context, I'm not lying. I would have assumed that this was an AI-generated image. I'd be like, you couldn't possibly make a van like that. That doesn't exist in reality.
So it would suggest that Mark Kern is not very good as an administrator. He gets kicked out of Red 5 Studios. Also, on top of that, past employees have accused him of being absent for long stretches of time, occasionally returning to berate members of his team so badly, he gave to some of them access to a safe word in case he got too verbally abusive.
Wow, that's
like a level of self-awareness, but at the same time, stop doing that. Like, rather than give your employees a safe word, just stop doing that.
Yeah, if you know that sometimes I get too verbally abusive that they need a safe word, yeah, that should be a cue to, like, oh, maybe I need to investigate and learn how to change my behavior.
No, you need to be prepared to deal with my outbursts.
I'm similar at work, actually. I just give my employees a spray bottle, and anytime I get too bad, they just spray me, and then I back down.
I'm very good. I just give my employees a bag of gummy bears at the end of every day for dealing with me.
So following his ousting, he formed another studio called MEK Entertainment, I assume for his initials of his name, Mark Edward Kern. MEK Entertainment in 2014, only to leave that one on bad terms too. And in 2016, he announced he was developing another sci-fi themed MMO, similar but legally distinct to Firefall, called Ember, spelled EM8ER.
That does not read. Because I would, if I just saw that written, I would think, oh, I guess it's like Emater or something.
It's a fanforstic of video games. But ever since then, Kern has hosted various crowdfunding campaigns where he raised hundreds of thousands of dollars with basically nothing to show for it, aside from a janky alpha demo and a whole bunch of pictures of busty anime girls, leading both critics and fans alike to accuse him of being a scammer. For example of two YouTubers who have followed a lot of this, I encourage you to check out videos by MLYP and Mr. Drizzle, and I'll include links in the description.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, you bring up, and maybe you're going to get to this, how like even his fans have called him a scammer. In the end, like the victims of these people are the ones who share their beliefs, because the quote-unquote woke people don't bother giving these grifters any money because they disagree with them. Whereas, yeah, it is the people who are hoodwinked by them are the ones who unfortunately get taken. So it's, kind of a sad situation.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because there's a post that was on one of the Ember Kickstarters, I think. It was a direct message that everybody saw that got a lot of circulation in these communities. Are saying that he's a scammer. Whereas a guy messaged him and said, I'm like 70 years old. I put in $500. All I want is to play this game. Oh. And at this point, I don't know if I'm going to live to see it. Oh, kind of thing. Like, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like, they target people who believe in the things that they do, who will give them money and then give them nothing. The first ones, people who are predators like this, prey on the people who align with them. Because, yeah, the people who don't like Mark Kern, aside from the people who have already given him money, are not going to give him money because they hear these stories. But anyway, so one then might ask, what has been occupying Mark's time over the last several years that is keeping him from releasing Ember? And it's become pretty clear that the whole game development thing is more of a side hustle for Kern these days, taking a backseat to his two true passions. The first is being a full-time right-wing anti-woke shitposter who spends most of his time online complaining about all the typical Gamergate-style talking points, sicking his fans on people he doesn't like, and simping for Elon Musk. Unsurprisingly, he is also a vocal supporter of the Real Game Awards. And then there's his other passion project. Oh, this is fun. This is the fun part. His other passion project, producing internet fetish pornography under an assumed name.
Was that what the camera equipment was for?
I'm glad you asked.
Now here's the thing. Before we get into that, and I think the details of that will likely be illuminating and hopefully funny as well. If he actually did successfully managed to produce pornography and sell it to the people who gave him money for it, that sounds like more of a net good to the world than every other thing we've heard of him doing, because I am, as long as everything is between consenting adults, I'm quite comfortable with somebody making and selling and distributing pornography. So I wish he had just focused on that as opposed to all of his generously, I guess we'll call them failed video game projects, as opposed to like deliberate embezzlement.
Yeah, sex work is
Business.
work.
As you say,
work.
if it's between consenting adults and everything's above board and it's all regulated and everyone is safe, groovy, fine. Man.
It also speaks to, clearly he can finish a project. If it's something he's passionate about, he can clearly follow through a project, and clearly that's not Ember right now. But the issue I have with is not the content, for the reasons you described. This is where things get weird about that. So between late March and early May 2025, the YouTube channel, Much Like You're Posting, or MLYP, in collaboration with several other internet sleuths, broke the story that for years, Kern had been operating a series of porn websites specializing in lactation fetish stuff, as well as stories, videos, and artwork of attractive women beating the shit out of each other. So he's like a foxy boxing kind of guy. Incidentally, MLYP noted that the metadata on a bunch of Kern's porn content just so happened to match video equipment he procured for Firefall while at Red 5 Studios, so take from that what you will.
I mean, that's not cool, right? I mean, I've worked for private companies as web developer, graphic designer, and such, and found that the license that they used for Photoshop, for instance, that this was a big deal, 10, 15 years ago, they didn't pay for it, essentially, but they're making money off of it for something else, and that's not cool.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's misappropriating materials that first of all, again, he spent a lot of money on video equipment for a video game, and then just turned that into his own side gig,
I mean, who
basically.
among us hasn't stolen a stapler from work, but when you're talking about thousands of dollars of video equipment that you're then using for something else that's ultra lucrative for you.
Yeah. And there's also, on top of that, there are accusations that he may have funneled some of the money he raised for his gaming projects into his, let's say, extracurricular activities. But I will be clear that nothing has been substantiated, but a lot of the researchers who are looking at like MLYP have noted that he's not really putting the money into making Ember. It looks like he's instead putting it into these other things, like, running websites and doing production and everything for his porn enterprise. Anyway, the grifting, shitposting, foxy boxing pornographer got big mad about those nefarious edits to Stellar Blade and resolved to fight tooth and nail for those precious few inches of digital fabric on his beloved anti-woke waifu. On April the 26th, 2024, Kern launched a Change.org petition with a simple request: free Stellar Blade, promoting the campaign to his thousands of social media followers, entreating them to beat back the woke soy hordes he was certain were behind Stellar Blade's censorship. The petition's description, which Kern wrote out in 9 languages, declared this campaign was not simply a battle for horny weirdos like him to see just a little more digital skin. It was a fight against censorship and a line in the sand for freedom of speech. So, does anybody want to read this?
Stellar Blade is a phenomenal new game that just launched on PlayStation 5 worldwide, but it has a problem. The content has been censored from the original trailer version posted by Sony. We, as gamers, want this content back. We relied on it. We made the game the #1 pre-order worldwide because of it, and this is the true game we want. Stellar Blade is more than a game. It has become a cultural beacon for freedom of expression in a time where game publishers like Sony are censoring games more than ever. Stellar Blade was a breath of fresh air, and gamers rallied behind it because it meant things were changing, getting better, and the voice of creative freedom was ringing loud and clear. But, for reasons unknown, the game was censored. Changes were made. What we received after our good faith purchase was not the same as advertised. We believe in the game. We believe in Shift Up. And we are asking to get the game we believed in. Revert the censorship changes, patch the game, and you will find that even more gamers will join you and support you.
Well done.
Woo!
brilliant reading, and I think you.
All it's
you,
missing
thank
is the Sarah McLachlan song.
Yeah. I think you captured the full gamut of emotions that is clearly going through with Mark Kearney. There's hope, and there's anger, and there's longing. The thing that always, we relied on it.
Yes.
We relied. Oh my god.
I sensed a real Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearing energy there.
Yeah. I like beer.
So yeah, again, I feel like I gotta reiterate, like all of these are this alleged censorship were slight changes to some of Eve's outfits, which, as we pointed out, looking at the gifs of them, are imperceptible almost. Like, it's hard to tell which ones are the uncensored, quote-unquote uncensored, versus the ones that are quote-unquote censored. And
yeah, again, it's not like she was wearing a mini skirt and now she's wearing long pants or something. It really was hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
So, as of this recording, Grumps' petition has earned over 95,000 signatures.
Each and every one of them signed one-handed.
And comments from signers are a veritable rat king of complaints of censorship, cries of conspiracy, and tirades against the evils of wokeness and DEI. So here are some notable examples.
If a developer promises that their game will be censor-free and not cater to any consultancy group that wish to change the game because they are quote-unquote offended by beautiful women and handsome manly men, then that's wrong, and censorship of games should never be allowed or an option.
As far as I know, there's no evidence that that's happening.
Reject DEI insanity!
Keep politics out of video games, as they're a cancer spreading through everything we love. Stellar Blade was a beacon of hope for gamers. Bring back the original art design of the game.
Waves upon waves of ultra-violent video games are released faster than they can finish them. LGBTQ propaganda and characters are force-fed to a consumer base that is overwhelmingly not LGBTQ. Heterosexuality is not a crime, and censoring revealing costumes and lecturing to the public about what's acceptable is not at all what any of us are paying $70 a game for. If consumers want attractive females wearing little to nothing in games, and a studio is prepared to listen to and deliver that, no other company should stand in the way of that.
Western devs in shambles. No more covered up, fat and dog-faced females in video games, please. Was that English?
So that's, like, again, it's just like they brought a lot of these larger culture war issues into Stellar Blade, and it's like, again, like when we talked about Sweet Baby Inc., they're getting mad at something that just isn't real. They have constructed in their heads, or through the eyes of content creators like Mark Kern, this idea that there must be some kind of conspiracy where, like, the woke mob somehow was behind this. It couldn't have been, we're not going to listen to what the developers tell us. It's clearly this. It's some kind of outside influence, and they have used Stellar Blade as kind of a forum for all these other issues. They have created a controversy themselves and are using this to get themselves real hot mad about that. And if you want more about this, there's a really, really great video by this YouTuber Sean, who did a whole deep dive into this. It's called Stellar Blade, The Fake Outrage, from November 23rd, 2024. I highly recommend you check it out. It is a lot of fun. There's also a purity website called freestellarblade.com, which is the one I showed you all, which has since been taken down. So I had to use the Internet Archive to show that, which included an image of the April 21st Shift Up tweet that I mentioned a while ago, the uncensored in all regions tweet. Below the words in big capital letters, "You lied!" with the following passage.
Why say uncensored all countries if not referring to the outfits? Why present the uncensored outfits in the trailers and claim they were unfinished after release? Why render videos and images of the uncensored outfits and leave them in the game? I feel like this guy has like a red string and pushpin conspiracy board in his house somewhere.
Yeah.
All about this.
All of this connects to the Rothschilds or something, you know? And the Illuminati. The Illuminati doesn't want me to see digital boobs as much as I can see them now.
Yeah, how does George Soros benefit from me not seeing these boobs?
And angry fans also flooded the initial X post that Shift Up put about uncensored stuff, accusing Shift Up of lying to them and needing to bring back their precious extra skin on a video game character whom you spent the bulk of your time only seeing from behind.
And as we all agreed, you see just as much butt cheek in version 1 as you do in 1.003.
Plenty of ass cheek to go around, yes.
Yeah. In any case, though, Mark's complaints appear to have been rendered moot on June 11, 2025, when Stellar Blade officially released on Steam, thus finally liberating Eve's online entourage to play with her in various stages of dress/undress through the magic of mods. Perusing Nexus Mods, which is one of the largest mod downloading sites, one can see some of the most popular mods for Stellar Blade involve altering her outfits, including one where she is stripped down to her underwear whenever she loses her shield, and one that allows the user to alter her jiggle physics.
But it's already award-winning Jiggle Physics.
Academy Award-winning.
One can only have some. It's like if you have there is the difference between having 1 scoop of ice cream and 10 scoops of ice cream.
You know, every few years the Academy Awards tries to bring in a new category. There's the petitions to bring in new categories. Boobs should be one.
You remind me of that year that Seth MacFarlane hosted the Academy Awards,
yeah.
And his famous song, We Saw Your Boobs. And it's just literally him going through a number of notable actresses who were in the audience saying, We saw your boobs in this, we saw your boobs in that.
Yeah.
Real classic. That was a high watermark for the Academy Awards.
Good stuff.
So yeah, on all that note, out of curiosity, I browsed the Steam discussion boards, and the folks there get awful defensive when people bring up whether Stellar Blade is, to borrow a term for the youngins, a gooner game. Which is, for those unfamiliar, is one of those games where you play one-handed, if you get my meaning.
That's why accessibility features are so important in games.
So yeah, that's pretty much everything on Stellar Blade. Any other thoughts about this particular controversy?
Well, I'm happy for everybody who now gets to play the game exactly the way they want through mods. And I hope the people at Shift Up have not lost any sleep over their complaints.
I feel like this was a thing that wasn't actually all that terribly visibly controversial, even for people who have opposing viewpoints to those of us in this room. It's not even as visible as, say, the whole Jill Valentine costume change thing. I feel like they figured they had cornered a studio who would bow to their whims, perhaps, and could then get a win and maybe point to that and say, see, we essentially, they wouldn't say it this way, but we targeted this studio, they changed things back the way we supposedly wanted, and then we bought the game. So, there you go. Because there's the whole idea of go woke, go broke, right? But how often do you see the reverse? It's here's a version that's anti-woke, and it made all the money, any more than anything else might. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that just when they say that, they're just saying that they're referencing a past of in the past, when it was just white people in the movies, look at the money you made.
Or well, I know I'm not going to go see this movie now because there's a black person in it or what have you. And I mean,
yeah, and one could never, there aren't any such movies like the Barbie movie or Black Panther that made
tons of money,
all the money in the world.
Or someone might point to something like, say, The Long Walk that came out this year that have a lot of people who are not white in the movie, whereas in the book, in fact, they were all white. And it's that was a very good movie, and it did very well at the box office, and, I don't know, I get frustrated when I try to talk about this.
And it also, I think one thing that the Stellar Blade controversy points to is how arbitrary the anti-woke crowd's targets can be, either games that they like or games that they don't like. Because, they could pick of any one of a number of games, and I'm not the only person who has pointed this out, because there's plenty of people who are smarter than me who have pointed this out, that, if it's a property that they like, something that they generally enjoyed, then they'll hold it up as, see, we beat back the woke hordes, this is an anti-woke thing.
Point, yeah.
And if it's something that they don't personally like, then this is the reason why it failed, it's woke. They don't like the Disney remake of Snow White. So, of course, the reason it didn't do well, it can't be because it's derivative and overly long and complicated and not very interesting.
And that Gal Gadot is famously not a particularly great actor.
Right.
Yeah, and it can't be because of all those things. It has to be because there's a woman of color in the main role. That has to be the reason it failed. Whereas, if there's a movie that they really, really like, that they think is successful, well, that's clearly a repudiation of the woke, It is a malleable thing that, again, I talked about the last time, like how it's become a business enterprise for anybody who is trying to carve a market, create an audience, generate clicks and ad revenue and merch and all that stuff. They can then say, well, this is the thing that is ruining games. This is the thing that's not ruining games. Come and listen to me tell you which things you should and should not be upset about,
Yeah, it's kind of like the equivalent of like wow, this controversy really blew up. Here's a link to my SoundCloud.
Yeah. All right.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Link to my Patreon.
There is, of course, a political angle for this, but you cannot dissociate this from a financial one, an exposure angle. Like, there's clearly like, guys like Kern. Like,
that's a really good point, actually. That's probably a very big reason why they wouldn't let this go. Yeah.
Well, like, again, a lot of Mark Kern's thing now is basically he has a very large platform. Thousands of people follow him on X because, of course, they do. And he will just make these proclamations about this thing he likes, this thing he doesn't like. Now, he's not a monolith, and for example, there was apparently there was a later patch that made slight changes again to one of the outfits, and Kern tried to declare victory and say this was shift up, giving us what we wanted, and a bunch of people who had been kind of radicalized by him saying, no, this is nothing, what are you talking about, we got nothing. And so like you have these like dissents among the people here, but it's like they need to be angry about something, and it's like you kind of just like plug it. Do you even like video games? Do you even like movies? Like, I don't know, do the things you enjoy.
Yeah, and I say that to people on both sides, or every side of the political spectrum. Like, yeah, we have limited amount of time on this earth. Spend it doing the things that bring you joy. And I don't know, maybe it's time for an intervention for some video game historians we know who really spend a lot of time
getting mad.
I'm
not mad, I'm just disappointed.
I don't get... It's funny you mention that. There's one of my inspirations when I started writing and got into history and stuff was this guy H.L. Mencken. H.L. Mencken was a cultural critic from like the 20s and 30s, wrote a lot about the state of America, talked a lot about like religious fundamentalism, and he has this line he has in one of his essays. He wrote for the Baltimore Sun for a long time. He's an editorial writer there. And he has an exchange. He says, someone asked me, why do I stay in this country? And he responds, why do people go to zoos? And I think about that when I think about observing these kinds of people. But that's where I think about with this. It's like, I find their outrage particularly just fascinating from an outside observational standpoint. And, I've always made the assertion on this show that games have always been political. There's always these political, social, historical forces that influence games. And all those people say, keep politics out of video games. It's impossible. They're products of their environment. And these folks, the ways that they try to politicize games, I think are very interesting, and speak to a lot of larger trends that are going on in the world. Like, I've said this before, like, would we have Donald Trump were it not for Gamergate, And the way that culture war talking points have become so much a major part of the political landscape. And video games is kind of an encapsulation of that politicization of everything like that.
Yeah, no, you are doing the world a service. But we never want to find you one day, oh, he had a heart attack over his keyboard.
Clutching a copy of, what was the game called?
Stellar Blade?
Yes.
Reading an email from Jack Thompson was the last straw.
Why was his shirt off?
If only Eve had better jiggle physics, Kevin might have lived.
So we will take a break here, and then next time we'll focus on one other game that gained popularity at the Real Game Awards. And then we'll wrap things up and think about what kind of impact, if any, this awards show had on the sort of larger gaming scene. And also, we'll take a brief look at their attempts to bring this back. Because as we're recording this, they're planning to do another version of this Game Awards at the end of February. So, something we may talk about a little bit. And that will do it for today's episode of Scandalous Games. If you like what we're doing and want to help the show, subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating. If you want to learn more, check out our website, scandalousgamespodcast.wordpress.com, where I publish the show notes and the sources for every episode. Our theme music is Occam Seek Me by Seek Knowledge via the Free Music Archive, used under a CC BY NCSA 3.0 US license. If you have a question, comment, or idea for a topic for a future episode, email us at scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Kevin Impellizzeri.
I'm Andy Hunter.
I'm Kate.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next Scandal. Subscribe to Fat Roll Gaming on YouTube and listen to So We Were Talking About Beast Wars wherever you get your podcasts.